sana menjerit familje Lena Rasha
In this episode about camel management, we're going to be talking about ethics and welfare. Not only about the camels, but also about all of those who are part of the milk production system or the camel management system, including the consumers. So, in terms of ethics, I think it's important that we should be proud of the products that we're producing. We should be producing safe, clean, good quality milk and other products, whether it's the meat or even the tourism. We must make sure it's safe and well managed, and all precautions are taken not to affect our customers or our consumers of the products that we're making. We should also make sure that those products, particularly milk, if we are selling it, we should make sure that it's regularly available. And this is a challenge because of the seasonality, and also that most of us have fairly small herds of animals, and you can't always guarantee that you can supply the amount of milk required. So it's important to make sure that we're reliable, regular suppliers of good quality products. And also we should be making sure that our customers are getting value for money. Yes, it's a business, so we do want to move forward and do well out of our business. But at the same time, we must not be cheating and supplying a poor quality product, or even making false claims about what our products can do. And I mention this because there's a lot of stories about the benefits of camel's milk, and there are many of those that I do believe in, but there are also some which I do not believe in. There hasn't been sufficient research to prove some of those stories or some of those anecdotes that people will say, oh yes, camel milk can cure this or can cure that. And we've got to be careful to make sure we're not cheating people or deceiving people. Yes, the camel milk is very good for managing some conditions, but it's not really going to cure many conditions. And I think that's important that that message gets out to our customers. It has its benefits more than many other milks, but let's not make claims that we cannot prove. On the human side again, I think we've got to remember that herding camels is a strenuous, occasionally dangerous occupation or job. The herdsmen are often working long hours and long days. They're working in very remote areas with a lot of heat, wildlife, often insecurity from other herders. So we must make sure that we put into place the right protection for those employees as well, because it's almost a 24-hour job. You're herding during the day, you're sleeping around the boma, and if a predator gets into the boma, or you can hear a camel crying out in pain, you have to get up and resolve the issue. So let's really make sure the welfare of our workers is also satisfactory. We're sitting in a nice cool Somali tukul. Now these are more expensive than tents, but they're long lasting. They suit the environment a lot better. They're warm at night and cool in the day. And again, they're part of the tradition. They're comfortable with plenty of space. So all of these aspects we need to look at in terms of the well-being of our workers and our customers. I'll also mention the need for insurance for the workers, making sure we're paying their right benefits, we're paying above the minimum wage, and to ensure we're not employing children. And this is one of the big challenges in the whole pastoral system, is for many centuries children have been the workforce, particularly in herding. The eldest son would always be kept to herd the animals, to inherit the animals, So ever since being a young child, they will have been herding animals. But times have changed. Education is vital and mandatory. So we must make sure that the children are no longer held back only to herd animals and get a fair opportunity at life. On the animal side, again, camels are social animals. They like being in a herd. They don't like being alone. They bond within the herd with other camels. They're often in our herd. It's several families where we've kept the grandmothers, the great-grandmothers, and now the grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And so all of those animals have their position within the pen, within the boma. And I do believe they recognise that. And we have what I would call a very happy and healthy herd. And that's why they're very docile, very well behaved. We're not just separating the calves or slaughtering the calves. We're not selling and slaughtering animals into the market on a regular basis. There is that identity, I believe, as a herd of animals. Also, the herdsman and the animals have to be able to relate and trust each other. The herders need to avoid beating the camels. For example, when we're training our camels for riding or for loading, we give them treats when they do well, rather than punishing them when they do not do well or when they misbehave. And equally, I believe that the animals in turn trust our herdsmen. They know that they're not going to be beaten. They know that the herdsman will release them to go and graze and be fed, will take them to water when needed. So I do believe there's that need for a bonding between the handlers and the herders and the animals themselves. We're not just a commercial factory farming business. We do consider those animals as individuals. To ensure the well-being of the camels, you need to get up early. You need to do all of the work, whether it's the milking or the treating of animals, early so that you can release them before 9 o'clock in the morning. And then you wanted to have at least 6 hours grazing. And normally we wouldn't bring our camels back until 6 in the evening. Some societies, particularly the Somali societies, they often bring their animals back much later at night, about 10 o'clock, so that the animals are really getting enough of food to satisfy their appetite. Also, the location of where you keep the camels. You need to make sure you're in a good grazing area, ideally away from the urban centres, away from the pollution, the plastic bags, the fast-driven vehicles which can injure the animals, and being out in the rural areas, close to the grazing, so they don't have to walk 10 or 15 kilometres to the nearest grazing. Yes, they can do that to get to water, but not on a daily basis should they cover these long distances. Then also making sure that we identify when a camel is in stress, whether it's not feeding, if it's got a sore foot, and then take the appropriate action, take early action to treat those animals. Make sure you're using the right drugs, the right drug to treat the right injury or the right condition, the right illness, and the right dose rates, and trying to inject as painlessly as possible, and using the correct location of treating the animals rather than just jabbing them anywhere. And then, since camels spend roughly 50% of their life in the night pen or the boma, it's important that you really choose a good site where the animals will be comfortable, where they'll be out of the wind, out of the cold. Sometimes they would need some shade if it's very hot, but since they're out grazing most of the day, you don't have to have shade in the boma or in the pen. The size needs to be right, enough space for the animals to lie and stretch and lie on the ground and roll over. Separating again the young calves from the larger male animals which might injure them. Again, separating the bull camels from the main dominant bull so they're not constantly fighting and being bitten. And when the young calves are very small, having a separate boma where the very young calves and the mothers that have just given birth can have space to themselves without having to compete for space. The site should be well drained. It should preferably not be on rocky ground. It should be on a slight slope so that when it rains, the water runs off and doesn't sit and keep the boma wet, because that's not good for the camel's feet or for the camels themselves. And protected from the wind and strong enough to prevent theft and strong enough to prevent predators like lions, hyenas or leopards getting into the boma and injuring or killing the stock. The intention of this episode is really just to highlight the animal welfare issues. Happier animals will produce more milk, more meat than stressed animals. And I often notice that the butchery system and the slaughter system, particularly in some of the abattoirs, is really traumatic for many of the animals, and indeed for camels. Camels are intelligent animals. And so we really need to try and find ways of better ways of slaughter. Yes, we still need to continue the halal approach because the majority of consumers and owners are Muslim people. But we must make sure that where possible, we can be stunning the animals first, reducing the stress, reducing the pain and the fear of slaughter. We also need to make sure that we're getting enough food for them. If there's not enough food in the grazing lands, then one does have to spend money and bring in the right food. Or if they need water and the borehole is broken, one can't just leave it another extra day. One has to go out and make sure those animals are getting sufficient sweet water at the regular time so that they're not thirsty and emaciated or hungry animals. And then also transportation. It's really of concern that a lot of the transportation of camels is very rough. Animals are forced into lorries. Sometimes when they're being offloaded, particularly I've seen videos from the Middle East where they're just thrown off the back of a pickup or a truck. We really need to make sure we're using ramps and loading them in an ethical manner. Yes, it is traumatic for them. They're not used to going on lorries and pickups, but we've got to try and make it as the least traumatic as possible. So I really would encourage you all and implore that you all do consider these aspects, because as you all know, camels are friendly, gentle creatures if you treat them right. And if they're not, it's often because we haven't treated them right. So these are the issues around ethics and welfare. I think the way forward for us in Kenyan camel farming is to try and take more and more of these aspects on board and make sure that we're proud of the way we're producing our products and that our animals, we can't say they're organic products or organically managed, because we do have to treat animals when they're ill with antibiotics or what other medicines are required. So it's not right to say all of our products are organic, but we can say that it is managed under good agricultural practice, with free-ranging animals given the liberty to choose what they want to eat, their favourite plants, and also able to live a natural life. They're not built anatomically to be living in zero grazing units and cement sheds. They are there and they've evolved to walk long distances. So I think we need to be as close to the natural system as possible and to make sure that we observe the withdrawal periods when we do treat the animals so that the humans themselves consuming the products, again, are not consuming antibiotic residues or pesticide residues, and we can really be proud of the products that we're producing. That's all I have to say, and I'd be really pleased if we start trying to move towards an ethical and a really good welfare production system for these animals. Thank you.